is doing her Pathways Engaging Humor, and this is going to be a level 5 project. Deliver your message with humor, 18 to 22 minutes. The title of Jamie's speech is A Glimpse into Xenotransplant. We all know what xenotransplant means. We had one of the latest xenotransplanted patients join us last week. Jamie is going to explain everything to us very clearly today. With that, let's welcome Jamie Imhof.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and guests. I'm very excited to be with you all. Xenotransplantation is a passion project of research that I have been doing. I have been following it closely, intensely. It has been a motivating factor in my learning. And tonight I wanted to both give you all a speech and a presentation to speak more about xenotransplantation. Now listen, 22 minutes max is not going to cover this all. So I'm only giving you an oinkling hint of what we're going to talk about tonight. But let's begin. You all can see my screen. Is that correct, Madam Toastmaster? Excellent. Well, let's begin. So this presentation, and then I'll speak more about it, is called A Glimpse into Xenotransplantation. Okay. Xenotransplantation is the process of transplanting live cells, tissues, organs from a non-human animal source into a human recipient. Now, the term xeno comes from the Greek word xenos, translating to mean a foreigner, a traveler, a stranger brought into a friendship or a long distance relationship. We took this term and simply applied that to this type of transplantation. It can refer to any type of animal species used. The first attempts at xenotransplantation actually originated a really long time ago, well over 100 years ago. And I don't think anybody knows this, but they involved, look at this, transplanting a pig kidney into the elbow of a 48-year-old woman, a goat kidney into another woman, and a macabre, which is a type of monkey, into the thigh of a 21-year-old woman. They all failed. And this is due to thrombosis, which is blood clotting occurring at a vein or artery, and it blocks the blood flow. Around the same time, they were actually starting to do other transplants well. So transplantation dates back to the early 1900s. Beyond that, we were doing even human stuff too. But with these failed experiments, and this is the same thing, kind of a hiatus began for 20 years. And this was also due to, because of the 2 world wars and the Great Depression. And then it wasn't kind of pointless until the appearance of immunosuppression. So moving on into the 1960s, a rhesus monkey kidney was transplanted into a human, but for the first time, they used total body radiation and the addition of azathioprine and acetaminosin C, which is a cancer drug, along with prednisone. This patient lived for 68 days and eventually, 63, succumbed to pneumonia. There's the monkey right there, just to let you know. Now the experiments continued on at Tulane University with 13 different patients and chimpanzee kidneys, and they had a varying survival period that lasted between 11 days to 9 months. Over in Jackson, Mississippi, they were using the lungs and the heart from transplanted into patients that didn't qualify for traditional transplantation. All of this failed and showed signs of antibody-mediated rejection. We all know that's very bad rejection. Additionally, it sparked really horrendous public and medical just feedback and response. And so it halted all future ventures, just ended there. Nobody wanted it from our closest animal species. Over the years, across the world, because it ended in America, but several other types of xenotransplants occurred. We did, again, more monkeys and sheep and goats and pigs, and they all failed, showing that traditional transplant medications in ways wouldn't be enough to sustain these grafts. So modifying the DNA would be necessary, leading to the 1990s. The world welcomes Astrid. I don't know if any of you guys remember Astrid. In 1992 was the first transgenic pig. This pig was a phenomenon back then. It came from England and Cambridge. She was the result of a micro injection of human DNA into a pig embryo, modified with the human decay accelerating factor, HDAF, a protein to inhibit the complement activation in humans. So it's kind of in a layman's terms, it was a way to make the first attempt at us being compatible in aging. So why pigs now? So we went from monkeys, we can't do because people don't want them, to pigs. Well, actually, pigs are just simpler. Pigs offer a shorter reproductive maturity, shorter pregnancy, more offspring, shorter growth time to maturity, more compatible size organs to humans than primates, despite immunogenic matching, more ethical based on surveys conducted over time, as we spoke about before. So fast forward to 2020s and what I call the new age of xenotransplantation in the United States. CRISPR technology. CRISPR-Cas9 technology is a revolutionary xenotransplantation by enabling precise and efficient gene editing in animals to create more humanized pigs, more compatible for transplant to address the ever-growing critical shortage of organ donors. It works by using a protein called Cas9 to cut DNA at a specific location, which is then repaired by the cell's natural repair mechanisms. This allows scientists to introduce changes, such as adding or deleting DNA sequences. Let me go back here. With this comes a big investment into what we call xenopig farms. Considering the amount of individuals in organ failure, biotech companies see this as a high reward out of a very high risk endeavor, but they're all in for this. Currently, there's no official count of them. However, we are aware of 6 of them, but 2 of them are the most known ones to us, and that is the United Therapeutics, Rebecor, UKidney, and the eGenesis company as well. These are the 2 ones currently now being used in humans. And these are some photos. I pulled this off of a presentation done for AP News, and this is an actual farm, one of the United Therapeutics farms, and as you can see on the top left, that's in Richmond, Virginia, and this is how these pigs are kept in these sterile environments, which we'll talk about here in a second. I did find it interesting that on the bottom, they give little toys to the pigs to play with to keep them entertained and happy. These pigs are created with a technique similar to that used to create the first cloned mammal, Dolly the sheep, as we all remember, to make cloned pig embryos from pig skin cells, actually, not stem cells. They are implanted into the wombs of adult females. 4 months later, the cloned piglets, all female, are born, bred to be heavily muscled and very efficient. And then they're typically harvested around 1 year for both research and transplantation. Despite being clones, they realize that each one of them has their own unique personality. Some of the pigs I was reading are very timid. Some of them want to be played with. It just shows you that the expression gene is still always unique. And of course, I'm sure we've all heard they're raised in facilities that are designed to be pathogen-free, filtered air, UV treated water, and concrete, as you saw on the prior photos, concrete floors. They're regularly screened for viruses. And all personnel coming and going are heavily sanitized from the entry with showering and wearing all protective hazmat suits just to minimize exposure. Let's talk about one of the companies. The first xenotransplants of United Therapeutics, engineered by Rebecor Inc., which is a 10 gene edit pig. University of Maryland Medical Center actually began these. I'm not sure if everybody's aware, the original first two were heart transplants. I have them listed. So we have David Bettnett, who was 57 years old, and he had a terminal heart condition and was ineligible for a traditional transplant. And Lawrence Facette, which was 58 years old, and he had end-stage heart disease and was ineligible as well due to vascular disease and complications. Now, these were made a whole, if you all remember, this was only now 2-3 years ago, and it was a huge phenomenon all over the news, especially in my area, being from Maryland. And unfortunately, both these individuals did pass. David after 2 months and Lauren after 6 weeks. And the factors were a combination of things. They included their own conditions, because these were patients that were very sick enough where they couldn't get traditional transplants. They did develop rejection, and a new development happened that was completely overlooked and foreseen was the addition of porcine CMV. Now, if you're familiar with transplantation, we all know that cytomegalovirus virus is a virus that we all, for the most part, in the human species has. And then usually it'll pop up after transplant. It can cause a whole variety of issues, and we treat it. However, pigs also have CMV as well, but it's different. And our traditional methods of treating it did not go well. We had to use a lot more, and it was extremely detrimental to these individuals, which now creates a problem that these scientists had to look into. How do we deal with this CMV? And we're going to see that, interestingly, in a few slides. Let's move on to NYU Legon. Lisa Passanoa, 54 years old, had heart failure and end-stage kidney failure, and she was ineligible due to multiple conditions. She received a mechanical heart pump and the same United Therapeutics pig kidney. Now, her pig kidney, unfortunately, had to be removed after 47 days due to being unable. It was actually not because of the kidney, it was that the heart pump just wasn't working well enough, and the blood flow was limited to the kidney. The whole thing just wasn't going to work. They removed it, and then she eventually, unfortunately, passed away from dialysis. Oh, on dialysis. This lovely lady, Tawana Looney, 53 years old, is extremely familiar to all of us. Again, from NYU. She, back this year, received another one of these pig kidneys, the 10-edit pig kidney. She was a prior kidney donor. What had happened to her was a pregnancy had left her with high blood pressure, causing her remaining kidney to fail. And then she developed unprecedentedly high antibodies, higher than the highest antibodies that we see listed. After 8 years of being on the transplant list, no organ was found to be available. So it wasn't that this individual was a bit different. It wasn't that she was extremely sick by any means or anything. It was just she was so incompatible that it was worth giving a try to these pig kidneys. Ultimately, just recently too, she just faced way too many complications along with rejection. And finally, the treatment for this rejection just grew so detrimental to her health that it just wasn't worth it. And this kidney was removed after 130 days. And she's still currently alive right now and considering her next steps. At this point, she has been the longest individual, other than that one from the 1960s, with these current new gene-edited pigs, to have carried such an organ to this date. Now let's move on to our other company, eGenesis. These kidneys are, these animals are a little bit different. So as you can see, they can range up to 69 gene edits. Well, what's the big difference? Okay. Well, according to eGenesis, there's 3 main types of edits. Removing the genes that produce sugars which trigger the human immune system, so hence trying to battle that rejection issue. Adding human genes to enhance organ capability, and inactivating porcine endogenous retroviruses, now known as PERVs, to prevent infection. Hence, trying to combat that pesky CMV issue, not to mention other ones that can come up with. So this is their claim to fame now. Richard Slayman, Mass General is the one hospital taking over these eGenesis in a partnership, and he received their first pig kidney. And his reason for needing one was he had a prior kidney transplant which failed after 5 years. He resumed dialysis, encountering several recurrent vascular access complications, severely impacting the quality of life. And he was just encouraged to become a trailblazer. So he said, yeah, let's do it. What was interesting about this case was it was completely unforeseen, but Richard actually passed away after 2 months, and it was nothing to do with the kidney. And so it was labeled as an unexpected cardiac event. My guess reading over this would be all of the issues he had for being on dialysis for a good portion of his life, and the same things that cause those complications. Which leads to our dear friend, hopefully eventually he'll be a Toastmaster, is Timothy Andrews. Okay. And Timothy is 66 years old. He was diagnosed with end-stage kidney failure, and he began dialysis. And after 6 months, he had a major heart attack. Now, this event led to a pursuit to do anything possible to get off of dialysis. His blood type O, the lack of a living donor, led to a long wait on the kidney transplant list. He had originally gone to Mass General and said, I don't know what's out there, but whatever you got, I'm willing to take. And they had an opening to attempt another eGenesis kidney, which they called him up and they said, would you like to do it? And he said, sure. So he did it. Currently, today, he likes to put it stubbornly, happily here with this kidney. It has not been an easy journey. I'm actually going to speak about that once this presentation wraps up a little bit, with several complications, including fluid retention, rejection, and still undetermined wound infections. These are lovely pictures of him and his wife. So he originally named his kidney Wilbur until he found out that all the pigs are females. So now the kidney is named Wilma, and she is one mighty fine pig. As far as the future of xenotransplantation, clinical trials are in the talks for 2025. So right now, these individuals are being done under, well, first it was compassionate cases, and now it's on a volunteer basis. And the next step would be to initiate clinical 1 trials. But all eyes are currently watching Timothy, who is now the only individual still with a foreigner on his travels. Let me pause this and stop this. I want to tell you all how I met Timothy and why communities are so important as I wrap up this presentation. Is originally Timothy had posted on a NKF group, actually, out of nowhere, that he received this pig kidney, and he was looking for friends and he wanted to share his story. And I go, are you kidding me? I would love to hear your story. Why not? And so I reached out to him and I said, absolutely, we need to be friends. Excuse the lighting here. So we began this friendship, and him and I talk daily now, and it's actually become so close that he is actually friends with my family as well. So the interesting thing about Timothy that I want you all to know is that he's really no different than us. We're on the same immunosuppression medicines. We face the same challenge, same complications. He's been having fluid retention that they're trying to figure out, do different things to. He's also faced rejection. He's gone in for plasmapheresis, some other treatments, but this would be no different. We've heard about these same things with someone who receives a regular kidney, whether living or deceased, within the first 3 months. And I like to remind him that had he had chosen that path, his story could be the same. And to remind him what an amazing human being he is to keep trailblazing this as we currently speak. And right now, as I had mentioned, in that he's experiencing a very strange wound issue out of nowhere that they cannot identify the pathogen whatsoever. This is really baffling all of the ID team, the infectious disease team, along with iGenesis, showing that they're not done yet with these edits and they need to look into more things. And frankly, in my opinion, before they begin these clinical trials, it's really important to take some time and watch the progression of how things go with Timothy before I would think it's more comfortable to select up to 50 individuals they're talking about from United Therapeutics to implant more of these kidneys. But all in all of this is absolutely fascinating. And I just, again, everything that we brought up is only just, there's so much more to what's going on. And we are limited in our knowledge too, because a lot of this is kept hush hush since it's in the control of privately invested in equity companies. And there's a lot of ethical debate with that still to this day of how that's going to play out. Just look forward to seeing the future of all of this. And I hope you all are too, because this hopefully, remember, all the first transplants epically failed. Livers failed so badly, it took 20 years to reinstate doing them as well too, before, that was another thing from the 60s to the 80s with immunosuppression. So I am fascinated, and just like Charlotte's Web, it's a spider unraveling in a mystery for all of us to follow. And I thank you all for listening to my presentation tonight. Turn it back over to you.
Thank you for that wonderful presentation, Jamie. I think how many of you learned a lot more about xenotransplantation today? There you go. This is exactly what we needed to know, Jamie. All of us learned a lot today.
Yeah, we did not know that. I was not aware that it started back in 1920s.
Indeed, indeed, yeah. So let's take 1 minute to give our feedback to Jamie before we move on to the next session.